My name is Courtney Colson, a female to male to female detransitioner, and on this channel we try to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. Although on this episode we'll be focusing on someone else, in particular Audrey Hale, who is the shooter in the recent Nashville shooting, and the media is claiming that she is a transgender man, and while we don't have any confirmation, or at least at this point, if she was undergoing hormone replacement therapy, I really wanted to speak on that and how, everyone's saying, on the left is saying, oh, everyone on the right is just blaming testosterone. Hormone replacement therapy is safe. It's not. It really isn't. So I wanted to speak to that because I have myself experienced increased aggression and violent impulses due to taking testosterone. And I'm not seeing anyone else really discussing that, and I guess there aren't that many people who have been through these experiences and taken these medications, but I have, so I'm going to discuss that. But first of all, I am going to just run through the details of the case as we know it. So Audrey was 28 years old, and I'm 31. Can't believe that, but yes, I am 31, so, close in age. She attacked a primary school, and she had she went to this primary school as a child, had no association with it as an adult, which is strange. She murdered 3 children, and I think there were a few adults. I think it's 6 in total. And it's quite fascinating that her entire online presence was very quickly erased. Her social media profile, Instagram, LinkedIn, and her own personal website were all removed, and I just have to ask why. It's not like these pages are glorifying a killer. They're simply historical artifacts. They are our access to the truth, to understand who this person was, and given that we live in a world that loves true crime, why hide this particular one? So I can't get too much information on her, or thankfully the Wayback Machine has archived some of her artwork and stuff, and it's really interesting reading the conversation surrounding her art and her interests and hobbies and stuff. I think she was very likely autistic. No one's discussed that. She doesn't seem to have an official diagnosis. Her family just said, oh, she's a very quiet girl, no issues. But the fact that she was fascinated with kidcore, so all these aesthetics. If you're old like me, if there's core on the end of it, it means that it's an aesthetic. Or punk, cyberpunk, steampunk, that's what we had back in my day. But now there's cottagecore and kidcore. I don't know, but this kidcore is basically very nostalgic, very neotenous, childlike, so you basically dress up like a kid from the 90s. And Audrey was kind of doing that. She had the backwards cap and the army pants going on as she was murdering children. Not that this is a discussion on fashion, but I have a background in costume design, so I do really look at what people are wearing and see that as an indication of their psychology. I think clothes really do tell us a lot about where someone is mentally. So yeah, I'm wondering if the camo pants were a very deliberate choice on that day because of what she was doing. But yes, so her website, which is archived, I will put a link in the citations down below. So this is an archived page from her website. Hello, my name is Audrey Hale. I'm a freelance illustrator and graphic designer who creates logos for businesses. I primarily work with clients that desire a brand personality. I provide illustrations and designs that will help tell a company's story. Illustrations usually bring a whimsical and light-hearted feel. Aside from art, I enjoy binging on video games. Of course, the video games, they cause the violence. That's clearly the main issue here. Watching movies and playing sports, yeah, okay, that's pretty average. There is a childlike part of me that loves to go run in the playground. Bit weird, okay. Animals are my second passion. I also enjoy spending time with my 2 cats. So there is actually a link to her Instagram, which says Creative Aiden. So she was going by Aiden sometimes. It seems like she was going back and forth. When I transitioned, I was Courtney for a long time, and then it was about a year or two living as a man, I did finally switch over to Connor. So I'm trying to pull some kind of meaning out of very little evidence, but yeah, I mean, she could just be questioning, she could be on testosterone. There's really nothing we can say for certain here. But looking at her art, well, the photo we have here, which I've probably put somewhere, yeah, she's got the Super Mario cap on. She's got a Disney, just like a Disney Mickey Mouse themed shirt. So, you know, it some geeky things here and there, but I think the media is kind of blowing a lot of her stuff out of proportion. They're looking at her art. There's really terrible art. I can't believe she's actually gotten professional commissions. Because, yeah, as you can see, it's like really childlike stuff. And then everyone's going on about this portrait she did, which is actually much better than her other stuff. There's a portrait of Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And they go, oh, you know, it says murder backwards. And you're reaching. You're really reaching. And so I'm looking at this as someone who, similar age, similar background, similar experiences, think this is just an autistic kid who's having trouble fitting in and adapting to adulthood and adult responsibilities and retreating into a fantasy world. I don't really know where this violence comes from, except perhaps she started taking testosterone. Because, you know, if I had acted upon the impulses I was dealing with at the time, news would have said the same thing. Oh, you know, this geek, this otaku, she's just, you know, retreating into her world of Alien and Prometheus, which was the thing I was into at the time. And, oh, well, you know, she admired David, the Michael Fassbender character, so clearly she's a sociopath. And, you know, looking at my mediocre art and trying to draw some deeper meaning, I don't think there is. I think it's just about brain chemistry. And when you start pouring inappropriate chemistry in that brain, shit's gonna happen. Let's just put it that way. There was one article, it's on the Howie Carr show, but I like this quote here. When children don't get what they want, they resort to violence. Her internal struggle, whether born of selfishness, jealousy, or extreme bewilderment, drove her mad. Though her manifesto is forthcoming, I predict her motive largely vengeance. Her youth left her, so she organized a bloodbath to steal youth from those at Nashville's Covenant School. Yeah, possibly. I guess it might be something we will never know. And even if we do get that manifesto, if it will make sense to us, sane people. But as a Detrans woman myself, I can tell you absolutely that testosterone will drive you insane. You will have all sorts of thoughts and urges and problems that you will not understand, and your doctors will also not understand. And you will go to them with these problems, and instead of, I don't know, stopping this treatment, getting you off the medication, no. They'll prescribe you other forms of testosterone, but only the brands that they get kickbacks from. So, I guess I got to tell you about my specific story. That I took testosterone for 5 years, and the first couple of years were great. I felt amazing. I was bodybuilding. I was really bulking up. I had more energy than ever because I had chronic fatigue before that. It went into remission, then it came back because of the testosterone. But there was a nice, glorious period of time there for about 2 years. I felt bulletproof. And then I got the chronic fatigue syndrome back, and then that obviously affected my mental health. So not being able to exercise, not being able to socialize as often, these were all things that exacerbated the issue. And so there came a point where it wasn't just psychological, it was physical things. I was getting constant priapism, so a constant erection. I didn't have any real sex drive. I wouldn't develop a sex drive until I detransitioned. But I would constantly have these very violent sadosexual fantasies always focus on women. I never thought about doing those things to men, which is very alarming, and at the time I found it very alarming. And, I was trying masturbation or anything just to relieve this situation, nothing. And I kind of thought, well, maybe I should stop taking testosterone, but I'd had it so conditioned into me by my doctor, my endocrinologist, and the trans community. Oh, you don't just stop. It's really dangerous to just stop. Turns out, yeah, you can just stop. Especially in a situation like that, I really should have, but I continued to take it, but in smaller doses. And I tried to contact my endocrinologist, couldn't get through to her, and they didn't offer any help. So I just lived like that for about a week until I could get an appointment. And I remember getting on the train and just looking around, especially at other women, and having really awful thoughts and thinking I was so close to snapping. And I'm very glad that in Australia, especially WA, we have very tight gun laws. I would never have gotten access to any kind of weapon that could have done that much damage. But yeah, I get it. If this Audrey, Aiden, whatever, wanted to do these things because of testosterone, I get it. It's very hard to cope with. Amazingly, I continued to take testosterone for about 2 or 3 years after that, and I think it's because I went to the endocrinologist and we started on Testogel. Then I had these issues. Then she gave me Androfor, so I was convinced, oh well, we've solved the issue now, and that'll never happen again. But turns out I've actually had a friend who is in the medical industry, knows this endocrinologist, and says, oh, she is a real shill for the pharmaceutical industry. She pushes hormones for transsexuals. She pushes all these hormones for menopausal women and weight loss ones and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, that really makes a lot of sense. It's all coming together now. I think any doctor with any real morals or backbone would see a patient like me and see not only is she having these violent impulses and priapism all the time now, her relationship with her family is falling apart, her health is falling apart. I am not helping this patient. I am harming this patient. I am violating the Hippocratic Oath. I am giving her something that is making her significantly worse and dislocating her from reality. But she never had that discussion with me. I don't even know if those thoughts entered her head. All she saw was money, and I can profit from you, and I am meeting a quota, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And I'm not saying all doctors are like that. I think most of them aren't properly informed. They don't have time to do all the in-depth reading and research on this whole trans ideology that's just cropped up out of nowhere. They've just been given all these rules and regulations. This is how you treat trans people. Don't question them. You'll lose your job if you question them. So, and I'm not saying this is what Audrey went through, but what I am saying is that if she had gone down this path of hormone replacement therapy, and she was showing red flags, she was showing warning signs, she did try to get help, there was no help to be had. Because a doctor can't tell you no. They can't tell you stop taking hormones. You are a woman. You cannot become a man. This is making you sick, mentally and physically. Because they're afraid of getting sued, or fired, or losing their license. And I don't think this is going to be the only instance of this. There are probably, the longer this whole trans bullshit goes on for, there are going to be other trans-identified women, trans men, who are probably going to snap. I'm amazed there haven't been more. If you know me, you know I like to look at the science of these things, and I did read a very good book by Carol Hooven, The History of Testosterone, and it was very eye-opening. This very matter-of-fact, factual exploration of testosterone. There's no bias, there's no agenda, it's not about trans ideology, it's just how does testosterone affect primarily men. It doesn't really focus on trans men or trans-identified women that much. But so she has a whole chapter on crime and why men seem to commit 90% of all violent crimes. And that's always been the way and probably always will be the way because of testosterone. And you see this across species, especially mammals, especially humans, that the male is the aggressive one. They are the hunters, they're protectors, they are competing with other males for females. It's very rare in nature that you see the females competing for males. And so that is why, biology determines behavior. And so men are going to commit more violent crimes because when they have mental health issues, it's generally women either internalize it or they will get into toxic relationships, substance abuse issues, or there's more psychological manipulation, narcissistic personality disorder, all those sorts of things. Those are much more common amongst women. Not to say men don't do those things, I'm just saying statistically, men will do all the violent crimes, the shootings, the suicides through violent means, and so on and so forth. That seems to be more the domain for male mental illness. But it should also be noted, and Carol Hooven says this, when a woman is violent, it's not as destructive when as a man is violent. So if we're just talking about domestic violence, physical, just one-on-one assault, no weapons, a woman generally is smaller and weaker than a man. The amount of damage that she can inflict is not going to be the same. And even if she has a weapon, especially if it's blunt force, the amount of force that she can put behind that instrument, it will not be the same as it is for a man. So that should also be taken into consideration. But let's just look at gun violence. Gun violence is quite equal. A lot of equity there because, well, anyone can pull a trigger. Anyone can wield a gun and have the same results with it. So gun violence, predominantly, hugely dominated by men. Women, I think there was a school shooting a couple of years ago, I'll have to look that up, but it was a teenage girl who went on an I don't like Mondays kind of rampage through her school, and everyone was shocked. Everyone couldn't believe, no one could believe that a girl did this. It's just so incredibly rare. And she wasn't trans or anything, so yeah, it can happen. It's not like it's impossible, but the numbers don't lie. Women just generally don't act like this. So that leans me towards thinking Audrey might have been on the tee. And this is an issue that's, you're seeing a lot of debate on the left and the right. And the left is obviously trying to sweep it all under the rug and going, well, she wasn't really trans, that's not true. And it's weird that everyone on both sides is now potentially misgendering her or him. When it's a man identifying as a woman committing a crime, she raped children, now she's in a women's prison and impregnating other women. Pretty sure that's not a woman. Yeah, where it comes to trans-identified women, trans men, trying to be very clear with my language here, and that's one thing. Trans men don't gain anything by pushing their trans identity in the legal system, because going to men's prison does not serve them at all. It's bizarre to me that the media keeps calling her she, even though, well, there's the he, him pronouns, and I have to wonder if it was a trans woman, if this would be the case. But, yeah, the left is saying, the right is blowing out of proportion, it has nothing to do with testosterone. But we have to discuss it, we have to take that into consideration, whether it's true or not. Because as I am sitting here in front of you right now, saying, yeah, you will become more violent. You will have shocking, violent fantasies because you're taking testosterone. It's not a joke. So why is this being handed out? These prescriptions are just being handed out so freely with very little questioning or examination, and it's getting to this point now where, well, okay, it could be actually dangerous not just to the individual but everyone else around her. This is just breaking news. This is an article that was only posted today. Hale has been described as having high functioning autism, but police revealed today she was also under doctor's care. But was she under doctor's care for that, or being trans, or both? We don't know. Her parents knew that she had a weapon at one time, but told her to sell it because they thought she couldn't be trusted with it. Instead, she hid her stockpile and added to it, buying several different weapons in total from 5 different local stores. Chief Drake added, law enforcement knew nothing about the treatment, and it is apparent she should not own weapons. Yeah, no shit. So if she was known to be very childlike, have autism, be transgender, having mental health issues. And this is the infuriating thing. So you have all these advocacy groups who think they're doing the right thing, where they're saying, well, autistic people aren't capable of violence, transgender people aren't capable of violence, these people are more likely to be victims of violence. And then you put governments and doctors in this awkward position where, so we can't even question autistic or trans people. It's the social justice is interfering with actual justice. It's a real problem, and no one's comfortable enough to actually just stand up and say, hey, maybe we don't treat these people like they're saints. They're human beings. They're fallible like everyone else. And so they need to adhere to the same laws as everyone else. So, yeah, if this woman, she's an adult, but I keep trying to say girl because she's so childlike, but yeah, this adult woman, has all these mental health issues. Why does she have such easy access to guns? And I mean, that's my whole issue. Everyone's issue with America is, why do you make it so easy to access guns? It shouldn't be. So this is what the Daily Mail says. Yesterday, she took 3 of her weapons to the Covenant School, 2 rifles and a handgun. Why does a civilian need 2 rifles and a handgun? Another 2 weapons were seen being removed from the house yesterday in a video obtained exclusively for Daily Mail. Police Chief Drake said of her family, they felt she had 1 weapon and that she had sold it. She was under doctor's care for an emotional disorder. An emotional disorder. She had 5 fucking guns with an emotional disorder. So yeah, in conclusion, this absolutely could have been avoided. And primarily it comes down to the gun laws in the United States being fucked. The rest of the world's looking at America and none of us can understand why you decided that things had to be this way when you're proven over and over again that it's not working, it's not a good idea. But that aside, focusing on the transgender and the autism stuff, yeah, it was absolutely a factor. I think so. From my perspective, as someone who has dealt with all of that stuff in the past, she was clearly dealing with a lot of shit that I have gone through. And if she had gender dysphoria, then hormone replacement therapy, if she did go on that, was not the answer. And if she wasn't on that, then she was probably having affirmation therapy, which is not really therapy. Affirmation therapy. Therapy is not about confirming your delusions. It should be exploratory. Exploratory therapy is where, well, why do you feel that way? Could you do something else instead of going down this path? Is this really the truth, or is this just something you've decided or imagined? She was obviously not getting that kind of treatment because that kind of treatment does not exist, especially if you're autistic or transgender. And then, yeah, with autism, that should have been reason enough for there to have been some kind of gatekeeping, some screening process for her attaining weapons. It's not clear if she lived alone. I think she might have been. The wording on everything is not particularly clear. But because the trans and the autism community are so dogmatic and they're so hell bent on defending their own image, that any evidence to the contrary, that, well, these people are unstable and they can commit acts of violence, doesn't agree with their image, so they try to suppress it and spread lies. So that's basically all we know for now. If there is more information and I feel like there's anything I need to say about it, I will update this video. But long story short, testosterone does not belong in a woman's body, at least not in those quantities. It has all kinds of ramifications, lasting effects on the body, on my body, but psychologically it can create a monster. You become very aggressive and you can start having violent delusions. You are detaching from reality, not just because of the medications you're taking, but because every doctor and therapist around you is affirming those delusions. No one is questioning you, no one is stopping you. And that is the true horror of this situation. And I don't use that word lightly. It is horrific. That's what I went through. That I was having a mental breakdown and no one was there to help me. And that's probably what happened to Audrey Hale too. She was having a mental breakdown. She was probably showing many red flags. But, well, you can't say anything to transgender or autistic people. You can't question them. Yes, you can. Please do. They need help. So, until next time, see you, Space Cowboy.